All right, hello folks. Welcome to part 4. Can't believe it's already been 4. Of pairing with James Shore here on moving from hexagonal to and exploring nullables and nullable infrastructure wrappers and A-frame architecture. Jim, why don't you say hi and reintroduce yourself for those who maybe haven't seen you before?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm James Shore. I've been around the Agile community for a long time. I got started in 1999 with feature-driven development, started using Extreme Programming in 2000. So I've been doing it for nearly 23 years now, which is which is a lot. But I still love it. You know, Extreme Programming, test-driven development, refactoring, evolutionary design, all this good stuff. It remains, even after 23 years, the best way I know to program. So
yeah,
really happy to be doing it with you. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been tweeting a lot about it and really, especially over the past week, been thinking a lot about some of the stuff we've done. And I'm not 100% convinced it's right for the way I do things, but it has crystallized some things that I sort of already naturally do by basically sort of, I think, shrinking down the parts that actually you want to substitute, and any behavior is sort of always used by all the code. So just wanted to.
Yeah. I've been thinking about it too since we last recorded or streamed, and the one thing that I realized, you know, I keep saying that because your code's really well designed, there's not a lot of benefit. I think there are some benefits, and I'm actually hoping to, you know, but wait, there's more. I think there's more to see that you'll like, particularly once we get into some of the benefits of having reuse from our nullables, which will give us some power that I don't think you've seen yet.
Right.
But one of the things that occurred to me is that the nullables approach, not the A-frame architecture, but just the nullables themselves, as opposed to stubs or are a way of getting you sociable testing that can be applied to any system. Like, it is a drop-in replacement for mocks. So no matter how your system is designed, you can put nullables into it and have complete sociable tests that validate that your whole system works together without using mocks anywhere in your system.
Right.
So if you're currently stuck with a lot of broad tests as your only way of making sure broad tests or end-to-end tests is your only way of making sure everything fits together, if your mocks are really hard to understand, then putting nullables in is a way of solving that problem that you are also solving with stubs, but requires a particular architecture that people just may not have.
Yeah. Yeah, I recently taught yet another version of my hexagonal architecture class, and I continue to say, like, if nothing else, if you separate tests from not, at least the majority of your tests not touching I/O, that makes life so much easier.
Yeah. And the thing is, with a lot of the systems are designed with a layered architecture.
Right.
A lot of systems, even if they're using hexagonal architecture, are doing it in a way where the logic depends on the ports, which means that they're in production depending on production or depending on infrastructure. So if you've got a situation where it's really difficult to refactor that, maybe because it's got a lot of mocks and stuff that are kind of tying your structure into place, you can put the nullables in that will allow you to take the mocks out. You'll get the benefits of sociable testing. Now you can start refactoring to a better architecture that is more in line with the kind of stuff that we've been talking about, where infrastructure and logic are really cleanly separated.
Yeah.
I think, you know, on my Discord, somebody was asking me, where does A-frame architecture come from? I said, well, that was just sort of something I invented, but it's really similar to Gary Bernhardt's functional core imperative shell. But I think we're all sort of, and you've done effectively the same thing. I think it's a very natural response to, it's really hard to test code that has dependencies on external state.
Yep.
And so, of course, what you're going to do, if you're thoughtful about that, is you're say, well, let's do all of our work in code that doesn't talk to the outside world.
Right.
And so A-frame architecture, your approach to hexagonal, functional core imperative shell, these are all really solving the same problem, and it comes from that same impetus of just wanting to have the ability to easily test our code.
Yeah, and exactly, and as I've mentioned, to whenever I teach hexagonal, I say, look, it's not like I went looking for an architecture, right? It's not like I said, oh, that looks pretty, I like I like hexagons anyway, but it's not like I went looking for it. It's I pushed on exactly that thing, which is, this thing is hard to test. Why is it hard to test? Because it's unreliable, unpredictable, hard to hook up, hard to control. In the control of something else, usually, I work in the realm of Java and frameworks and Spring, and so how do I get back some of that control so I can test it? And you keep dialing, ratcheting up that idea, and you end up with this natural separation. And I always think about it as like, putting the part that touches the IO into like a vise and like squeezing it and tightening it until like it's just the IO, and that everything else is then in memory, easy to test, and you can end up with different approaches. But I think you're right. That's like, it's all coming from, how do we make this stuff like just easier to test? Because testing is hard enough, and how do we make the majority of the code easier to test? And I just find it really clarifies. Like, I keep going through my head. There's an example I always use is like, if I want to test that I can read this spreadsheet and calculate some information, you could, and this is, sort of computer science 101 novice thing. It's like, you write a big function that takes a file as a reference, and like, how do you test that? Oh, well, I got to have a temporary file. And then there are all these workarounds about, oh, let me use JUnit, it can set up a temporary directory and create a temporary file, and then I'll make sure I have it. It's like, that just is a lot of work. How about we split the reading of the file from the parsing of the file and processing of the file?
And once you do that, things are way easier.
It's so much easier.
I think the only thing Nullables brings to the table, but I actually think it's kind of a big thing, is that, for years and years and years, people have been saying exactly this. Like, it's not new, but it's all all the dialogue is focused on, well, separate out your logic so it stands alone and then it's easy to test. What Nullables brings in is, it says, well, what do you do about the stuff that's not easy to test?
Right.
How do you deal with that crap? What do you do if your environment where it wasn't designed the way you want, but you can't refactor it without tests because you've got this chicken and egg problem? Can't refactor it without tests. We can't put tests around it until we refactor. What do we do? Right. Nullables helps you around that. Yeah. So I think its benefit is less clear in an environment where you've solved the exact same problems that Nullables is trying to solve. Yeah. Moving from one solution to another is kind of a lateral move. But it's fun to do anyway. Yeah. So I'm glad we're doing it. Yeah. But I think Nullables is another solution. It's not strictly better than using stubs, because stubs do give you sociable tests. There are some minor benefits, but there's some maybe not so minor uglinesses that go along with it. So, which one do you want to do?
Yeah. Like you've been saying a lot, it's all trade-offs.
It's engineering is trade-offs. That's my favorite phrase. Yeah. Engineering is trade-offs. There is no such thing as perfect solutions unless you're in a classroom, in which case, wait until you get to the real world, because there is no perfect answer. Yeah. So last time what did we do last time? We changed the fetcher, right? The HTTP score fetcher. Yeah,
let me share the screen for folks. So this is the diagram of the application. I've updated a bit to clarify some things. And so, so what we did last time was around this stuff.
Right. And we made the HTTP score fetcher nullable, and then we collapsed the HTTP score fetcher and the score fetcher down into a single file. Right. Because now we didn't need the port separate from the adapter, because there was just the one thing, which I happen to like. I don't want noise in my code that makes it harder to find things. So again, with hexagonal, your ports make it really easy to find things. But if I've got an interface which exists just to make something easier to test, that kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit, because I figure this interface does not have real domain layer meaning or domain logic meaning. It's just really in there for the purposes of making the test work.
Right. Yep.
So we finished this, and I think what we were going to do next was the notifier, correct?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So should we do that?
Yeah.
Should we get started on it?
So just to bring folks up to speed, so what we're working on is, this is our Yacht dice game application. And so Yacht is you might know it as Yahtzee. You basically roll a hand of dice, and that was a nice renaming that we had done. And so when we start the game, we roll the dice, you get 5 dice. And the idea is to score it in various ways. Has a flavor of poker with the full house and 4 of a kind. You basically try to maximize it. And so one of the things that it does, what that involves this external service, is the average score. So last time we did the fetching. So each time we score in a category, I'm just going to score it directly in ones. It goes and fetches the average score from the external service, which just started up. So the average score is 3. And so that requires 2 outbound calls, 1 outbound call to send the current score, this one we just scored, which is the 3, and then another one to retrieve, hey, what is the current average score? And so basically we in a sense did this part last, but actually the score notification happens before we do the fetching, so that we can get the updated result. Right. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, so last time we did the fetcher, this time we're going to do the notifier. I think we're done with the fetcher, so let's go ahead and pull up do you want to continue to have me navigate while you drive?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and pull up the notifier and its test. Do you have tests on the notifier?
I do. Here's the test. And let me, so that I'll put over here. No, not in another one. There we go. And game services up. I'll close that. Okay.
Oh, I didn't mean, I meant the real notifier, the actual
that was getting
score category notifier.
Yep. Just going to navigate to that. Whoa. Okay, hold on. A lot of those. You can see we've got a lot of basically no-op versions of it. So here is the real thing.
Right. And then over on the left, you have the tests of the game service, which uses the HTTP score notifier.
Right.
And this score category notifier mock, which is your test double for it.
Yes.
You want to show us what that does?
So basically, the method that the interface, the port in hexagonal has is roll assign. So what that takes is the hand of dice that was rolled, the score that was scored, and the category in which it was scored in. And so we verify that the score was sent by basically, in this case, it's actually a fairly hard-coded mock. So I use the definition here of mock as a self-verifying interaction checker. And so it's ensuring that, at least in this test, that it got a hand of dice with all 6s, that the score was equal to 30, and that the score category was 6s. And so these match up with the inputs that are in the test. So this is not a programmable mock, it's not a configurable mock, it's a hard-coded mock, but I only needed one.
Right. And when you looked at the usages of score category notifier, it looked like there were a lot of mocks implemented for that.
There are a lot of no-op mocks. So let me go to here. Yeah, so there are a bunch of no-ops where it's just like basically a dummy. I just needed something in there as a reference, but I didn't want it to throw an exception.
And that's what's happening in these other cases that don't directly say no-op score category notifier.
Yeah, we can look at, let's say, this one. Yeah, so we can see it's basically an empty lambda.
Got it. Got it. And then over on the left-hand side, we've got a test that uses the hand-coded score category notifier mock. Let me just see if I can interpret this real quick. So we we roll some dice using a nullable die roller. We pass that to the game service. We start the game service. We roll the dice. We assign the roll to a category, and we expect that the notifier would have been notified,
right,
or used to notify.
Right.
And there we go.
Right. And so like the test says, when the roll is assigned, that's when we send it out, and that's what we're checking for. Yeah.
Yeah. And this, of course, is an interaction test, interaction-based test. It checks to see that game service is interacting with the port, but it doesn't check that it's actually doing, like, the port does what it thinks it should. Right. So if the behavior of the real HTTP score category notifier isn't what we think it is, then the test will pass, even though the code doesn't work.
Right. And
we saw that last time at the end of the show.
Yep.
Which for everybody watching can be found at jameschore.com/s/nullables-livestream, I believe. And I think you've got a link for that as well, don't you, Ted?
One of them is.
Actually, I'm not sure if you do or not.
I might not.
But anyway, all the recordings are up on my website using YouTube.
We'll find a link specific for that and post it.
Yeah. So
one anyway, thing Dota to Attitude says the application layer find ends up getting mocks, and
yeah, I
will say that yes, anytime you're testing against the application layer, because at least in hexagonal, that's where we talk to the outside world.
Yeah,
you're going to want some kind of substitute for that, and whether it's mocks or preferably nullables or something like it, that's kind of always going to be the case.
And that is the problem that nullables solve, is how do you test code in the application layer that depends on both logic and infrastructure? There's real stuff going on there. You want to make sure it works. How do you do that without having to do all this complicated spin up and without having to use mocks? So that's what we're going to do. We are going to go into the HTTP score category notifier, and we're going to make it nullable.
All right.
So you've got do you have a test of HTTP score category notifier right now?
I don't believe I have a test. Oh, wait, I do. That's right. I have a manual test.
Okay.
And it doesn't do very much. It basically, it's not really a test. It's more, let me make sure it doesn't throw any exceptions, and then I can go check manually. Did the Yacht Tracker, the other service, receive it?
Right.
So it's a little of a lie to call it a test.
Right. You know, this has been true for a lot of your adapters, is that they haven't had tests. And I think a big reason for that is that it's really hard to test something that calls out to an external service. Yeah. One thing I'm hoping we get to, maybe today, maybe next week, or whenever our next session is. I think we're streaming next week, aren't we? It's not Christmas yet.
It's on my plan.
Yeah, we are streaming next week.
Yeah.
So when we get closer to the end of the year, I might be gone because of the holidays.
Sure,
but I will be here next week.
All right.
Anyway, after we finish doing the notifier, I want to show you how you can use nullables to have tests of your adapters. And so all these adapters that haven't had tests, we can put tests around them by creating a low-level adapter.
Right.
Anyway, we'll get to that later. But so yeah, let's go ahead and drag this one over to the left-hand side, because I know that's how you like to have it sorted. And we're going to start putting tests around this. So does that mean we can tag that test, individual test as manual, and still run the other ones?
Yeah, so when I run, so I have it set up when it runs the non-IO tests, it'll skip this test, but I can then run it directly if we want to. Is that what you're asking?
Well, what I'd like to do is start to add tests that do our non-IO tests and can run along with the rest of your non-IO tests.
That's fine. We'll figure that out.
Okay. So can you put the tag on just the one test? Or
no, the tag only goes on the class. But it's this test. I mean, we can either comment it out, or we can, because it's not asserting anything other than it doesn't throw an exception. So it's not terribly useful as a test. So I can take the tag off.
Okay. Yeah, maybe just comment it out then for now.
Or we'll just disable it.
Perfect. Okay, so show us what's going on here on the right-hand side.
All right, so we got, this is the API endpoint that we're going to talk to. So API scores, so that we're going to post to that, and we're going to send it some JSON in a specific format. And so what that expects is basically something like this. So it's going to have the score, and these are all strings just to make it easier. Oh, Chris says tags are supported on the method. I don't know though if I'll have to try that. It's not a matter of whether JUnit supports it; it's whether IntelliJ does. But we'll see about that. So here, expecting JSON score category role. Role is a string. Category is basically the string version of the enum, and then score is a string version of the number. And so that's what it's expecting to post. And so what we do is we basically create this role assigned to category. So this is a DTO.
Data transfer object.
Right, data transfer object. So it's basically got the string representations of what we want to send along with the appropriate getters so that the framework will automatically convert that into the JSON that we saw. And then basically this method just transforms the domain object information. So basically converts the hand of dice into the string. I probably want to rename that. Gets a string value of the score and gets a string value of the category, and then basically creates the DTO.
Okay. And so this is not specifically an average score. This is just reporting the role.
Exactly. Reporting
which
here's
is why
what
you
happened.
need the whole hand of dice.
Right. Right.
Got it.
So it doesn't require the hand of dice. But I didn't know what information the score category service would be tracking. So I basically asked for all the information.
Yeah, yeah. It's not using it now, but
it's not using it now, but it may use it in the future.
Yep. And conceptually, the idea is it's storing, it's collecting the data. Maybe it could do anti-cheat detection, for example.
Right. Yeah, and the idea is this is you could consider this very sort of like an event saying, here's what happened, do with it as you will.
Yeah. Okay, so and then there's the post for entity, which actually does the translation.
Right.
Okay, so the thing with up until now, we've done fetchers, and what we've done is we've stubbed out the outside world, and we have said set this data to come back. But of course, when we are sending out to the outside world, there's no data to get back. Yep. So how do we make this a sociable state-based test where we can run a test that actually looks at this, runs the notifier? How can the test tell what happened without using something like a mock that intercepts the call? So what we're going to do is we are going to make this notifier state-based, which means that it is going to provide a way to reveal how it's been used, what its behavior is. Okay. And the way I do that is with an event. Before we do that, though, and we're going to want to test that. And so even though making it state-based is not strictly part of making it nullable, in order to test it, it would be simpler and faster to test a null version of this than to test a real version. Mm-hmm. Like the state tracking is going to work in both the real and the null versions. It's just going to be normal production code. But just for convenience, we're going to make it nullable so that our tests don't take a long time.
Right.
Now, we can make it nullable first, or we can add the state tracking first. Really doesn't matter. What's your preference?
I'm kind of interested in the state tracking, so let's add that first.
Okay. So what that means is we're going to have to write tests around this that are just going to talk to the real service, not use, and we'll see the state tracking happen. And then later on, when we make it nullable, we'll just change the test to use the nullable version rather than the state tracking.
All right.
So here's how it works. What we need, so I know how I do this in Node.js, because Node.js has event emitters, the observer pattern built in. But that's basically what we need to do. We need to have, well, let me do it let me take this in small steps. Remember how we did when we did the very first die roller? I said, here's the dumb solution, and then here's the real solution.
Right.
Let me tell you the dumb solution first, because it will make things easier. So go ahead and create a test on the left-hand side. And what we want that test to do is to just call role assigned, and we don't care really any details. Well, actually, yeah, we basically want exactly a duplicate of the test you have now.
Okay.
And the name of the test is going to be role assignment is tracked, or tracks role assignment, or something like that.
Let's try role assignment as tracked.
Yeah. And that's basically going to be an exact duplicate of the code you have now, because all that's doing is setting up and calling role assigned.
All right.
And then our assertion is going to be, we're going to say something like HttpScoreCategoryNotifier dot get last role assigned is equal to the thing that you sent.
So notifier dot, say that I missed the
get last role assigned.
Okay. Can I drop the word get?
Yeah, that's fine.
I have
this is
all
temporary anyway. We're not gonna keep it.
That's fine.
Like this is, I think I mentioned at one point that I'm kind of slow and it takes me a long time to figure this out. So originally I knew that I wanted to make my sort of opaque objects state-based, like have some way of tracking how they behaved. And this was the dumb solution I came up with. Several years later, I came up with a smarter solution, and that's what I'm going to show you. That's the real solution.
Okay.
But this is sort of the dumb, simple way of doing this that I started with.
I like starting with dumb simple because I'm not smart either.
Yeah.
Or at least it takes me a while to be smart. So let me create this method. What do we want this to return?
That's going to return, basically, I think, the three things we passed in.
Okay.
So we might need to make a little.
Yeah, we'll need to make a little value object for that.
It could just be a role assigned to category, actually.
If we don't mind the strings, then yeah, we could just do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so are we going to assert then that these things are these things? So
yeah.
Okay. So this is equal to let's see, it's a private class. So let me pull these out separately. Yeah, I'm going to have to expose this. There we go. So category should be equal to little, wait. And then this is going to be score.
I think when we do the real thing, we're going to want to make this a little more ergonomic, better developer experience.
Yep.
But this is a good way of sort of starting it off to demonstrate.
Oh, whoops. 1, 3, 4, 2, 4. All right.
Then do me a favor and just factor out the last role assigned call. That's making me itchy that it's being called multiple times.
Ah, yes, let's do that. All right.
Okay. So yeah, make that pass.
I'm gonna make it fail first. So I expect it to be null. And it is. So let's convert this. Actually, yeah, let's convert this to a field. And then return that field. think that'll pass. Yes, it does.
Yeah. So that's the basic concept. We are making the state of the adapter visible. So we've sent something out to the outside world. We're tracking it. Now, there's a couple of problems with this. One is that it's going to consume memory in production, and it's not a lot of memory, but in some cases it could add up. Second is there'll be some cases where we might decide to assign multiple roles, in which case testing it's going to be really hard, because if our production code assigns a role, does something else, and then assigns another role before it comes back to our test, we're going to lose track of the first one.
Right.
So for that reason, I've got another approach to this that uses events, or the observer pattern, to track things, and to only track things when it's specifically asked to be tracked.
Right.
Before we get into that, though, do you want to talk about any thoughts about what we've got here?
No, I mean, this feels very mock-like, or a little bit about. I mean, it's basically the same. It's very not mock-like. Well, sometimes mock-like, but the idea that yeah, maybe more spy-like, that we're basically holding on to what just happened, and using that for as part of an expectation. So Dota Attitudes asks, does this approach work for database or just the UI UX layer? This isn't actually in the UI UX layer. This is, we'll get to databases at some point, but I think similar approaches will apply. But this is more, what we're doing today is more on the outbound side. So
yeah, it's not on the inbound. It's not UI UX. It's adapters of an external service, and the same concepts apply to a database that they do to an external service. The main challenge is that with databases, you tend to have more magic,
right, and
sometimes that magic is not amenable to using an adapter. I assume that the way you do things, Ted, since you like your hexagonal and you like your adapters, you don't use the magic. You create adapters for your database code.
I create adapters for the database code. Yeah.
But
I still use the adapters themselves use magic.
Right.
But yeah.
But if you're using a heavyweight, what's the word is escaping me?
The ORM?
Well, yes, the heavyweight object relational mapping tool that will automatically pull from the database in your domain code. Yeah, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
There's don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Even though that's exactly what they were supposedly designed to do, I think it was
a bad idea.
It's one of those works in theory, doesn't work in practice.
Exactly.
It's a great, anyway, we'll I'm sure we'll have lots of discussions about that. Yeah, Hibernate.
Yeah. We'll get to that at some point.
Hibernate is a source of so much evil in the Java world. It's a tragedy.
I wasn't going to mention names. I was just saying heavyweight ORM tools, but yes, that is the one I had in mind.
It's also why I don't use get, because there's a whole getter versus not getters and so on.
Right.
So I use gets where appropriate for a data transfer object, because it's just data. That's fine. But anything that's not data, I feel like it puts your mind in a different place if you're thinking, oh, this is just accessing internal state directly.
Yeah, not to mention that the performance implications of having some magic tool decide when it's going to pull from the database are not great.
Yeah, I want control of that, not some magic lazy loading and loads at when you don't want it to.
I don't sweat instantiation or method calls. The nanoseconds that takes does not end up mattering in 99.99% of my code.
Yeah.
But database calls, that kind of matters.
That kind of matters. That's the stuff that matters. Yeah.
That's milliseconds.
Yeah. Yeah. Performance is always a question whenever I talk about refactoring. And it's but you're going to have to, you're calling 3 layers deep. It's well, I don't know about other languages, but in Java that actually runs faster, because it could actually inline the code at runtime when it does the JIT compilation, and so it ends up actually being not that it's really measurable, but it ends up being faster anyway. But it's so, like you said, it's like, it's not measurable. That's not where you're going to have the performance hit in your application. It's not because you had a 4-level deep method call stack.
I find that programmers' intuition on performance is dramatically out of whack with reality. Because when you look at code, you sort of mentally tend to compare lines of code with performance, but they are not correlated at all. Loops are correlated with performance, but lines of code doesn't matter. I've run some stuff. So I was doing story time, little digression here. I'm writing a program to help me manage my investments. And what I have this doing is looking at all the investments I've made and how they've moved around over time and saying, well, with all the dividends and so forth, I say all the dividends, I don't have that much money, but with the dividends that have come in over time, like how much have I made? And I expect to make about at least 7.5% a year from stocks, right? So have I at least made 7.5%? If so, it's safe to sell this. If not, well, I'd be locking my losses. Don't sell it. So the way I wanted to make this, but it turns out that using floating point numbers, when you're talking about reinvesting dividends of fractions of shares, leads to some really awkward stuff. And the first time I did this, I did it in a spreadsheet, and I was constantly putting throughout the spreadsheet, if it's within 0.005 cents, right? And then it was 0.007 cents. And so for this program, because this spreadsheet just could not, I can make spreadsheets cry, but this spreadsheet was making me cry. Trying to track this stuff in a spreadsheet just wasn't working. So I wrote a program for it, and I wanted it to be precise. So I wrote a rational number class. Rather than tracking the value as a float, it tracked the numerator and the denominator. And I'm thinking, this is really expensive, right? I'm going to have to do all this stuff to make sure it's right. I'm going to do, so I'm going to have a compound rational number. And what I'll do is that's going to, later on, I'll go through and I'll loop on it. And I will take advantage of the cache lines in the processor to do this in a tight loop. Like I was being really smart. And just for context, this was like a month ago that I did this. So this is how smart I am. And then I got through and I put the first, I had enough of it built using A-frame architecture that I put in pasted in the first spreadsheet, and I ran it. And it took, once I got past 150 lines in my spreadsheet, it started taking exponential time. Like I started killing it after 30 seconds. Oh my God, I'm going to have to get that tight loop in with that smart cache line optimized calculation. But before I did that, I decided to look at it. And it turned out that what was happening was that my fancy compound rational, I thought the rational numbers were going to be slow, right? And so I built this compound rational concept to later on optimize it. That was the source of the problem. When I just did massive amounts of adding two rational numbers together is lots of multiplication and division, right? You got to find the least common denominator. That's in a loop. There's a lot of calculations. I took out my fancy optimization code and I just brute forced it. I said, do all the rational stuff. And now it was too fast for me to notice. So moral of the story is, no matter how smart you think you are, your ideas about optimization are wrong. And particularly if it involves something that happens entirely in memory, it's faster than you think.
And I think, that, one of the things I always tell people is look, measure first before you try to optimize, because maybe you're right, but how do you know? But I think a lot of, I feel like a lot of this bad intuition is big O notation as it's learned and taught in school, that it's context free and it's talking about, what is it, number of loops and sort of but the idea that we can write code today, 20 years ago, maybe that kind of care in terms of writing it made a difference. Today, well, first of all, is it even going to be running on your machine? Right. And if it's not, it's running on a machine that's probably shared, and who knows how it's shared, and who knows, what's getting cached, and your neighbor maybe is it's just at that point, the idea that you can predictively figure out what's going to be costly just, I think, goes out the window.
Well, and that's where I got messed up in my compound rational concept. I saw the expense of that greatest common denominator calculation, which is a loop. I thought, well, that's really expensive. But what it turned out was that the cost of doing the compound numbers ended up that I was repeating calculations over and over again. And if I had just like collapsed it down and did it once without worrying about doing it in a tight loop, taking advantage of processor cache lines, the performance was exactly the opposite of what I expected.
Yeah, because CPUs are really good at all sorts of math that I think, unless you do research into what kind of code is it generating, it's just like, is it fast enough?
The compilers are smart. The VMs are smart. They're doing all kinds of optimization. And then within the processor, you've got branch prediction. And that is really hard to understand. It's basically a black box. And
I think you have to treat it that way.
And you can measure. So don't say something's going to be slow. Find out if it is slow and then worry about it. And if you do have to worry about it, then you're in for a hard time. But preemptively optimizing can actually make your life worse, not better.
Yeah, and I have a slide that I always show in my presentations on this kind of stuff, which is readability is much more important than performance when you're writing the code. Later on, you can measure it, and then you can find where that bottleneck is. It's probably not where you thought it was going to be, and even if it is, well, good. Now you have proof, and now you have a benchmark that you can say, is this faster or slower? Because you might do what you think is an improvement, and it might be the same, or it might be slower, or hopefully it's faster, but you have some place to start from, like, what is the dumb solution? Because I remember writing an article, it's like, don't fight the compiler in runtime. Like, let it do its job. You might have had optimizations from 20 years ago. It's like those optimizations no longer apply. And in fact, might actually slow you down.
Yeah. We should get back to this, but I one last comment, which is that my biggest pet peeve is when somebody writes a 10-line loop and says, this thing is, 10 times faster than that thing. But really what they're like, for example, unboxing versus unboxing, or string builder versus not string builder. And it's like, do you have any idea how meaningless this is in the context of a large system?
Exactly. It's like we're talking nanoseconds, and it's like, okay, great. It's 10 times slower, but it's going to be completely blown away by that one IO call you did that you didn't want to.
Right, exactly. So anyway, let's get back to our HTTP Score category notifier. So you get the concept. What we're doing is we're making the behavior visible through state. What we're going to do next is what I want to do, what I've done for my other code is I've made a generic, what I call an output tracker. And what this does is this, and maybe I'll toss it up on the screen. So what we have here, this is a really simple piece of JavaScript code using Node.js. You call track output, you pass in an event emitter, which is something that's built into Node.js, and the name of an event. And what it will do is it will listen for that event on the event emitter, and then run a tracker function, which will just pass whatever text is passed in with the event, push it onto an array. And because of the nature of object and array references in both JavaScript and Java, when we push something onto an array, anybody who has that array reference will immediately see that thing that's added to the array. So what this means is that when that event is emitted, anybody who's asked to get this data has it. And this code's a little bit weird in that it returns the array and then adds a couple of functions to that array, which obviously we're not going to do in Java because that's really weird. It's a JavaScript thing. And I actually stopped doing in later versions of this code because it is kind of weird. Now I make a class that has data as an accessor, consume, which erases the array, and off, which turns off the events, which you don't have to do in test code because the garbage collector takes care of it for you. But in production code, you want the ability to turn that off. So that's the idea. I would like to create, I've not done this in Java yet, but I would like to create something similar to this concept that is basically does our event tracking for us
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is sort of fire and forget. I use this code all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see if I can find an example of it. Oh yeah, well, let's go with our log. So this is the logger for this little sample application, which can be found on my website in the TDD Lunch and Learn series. And you'll see right here, there's a track output. It just turns around and calls infrastructure helper.track output, passes in the emitter, passes in the output event. And then when we log data, we emit that event. And that's effectively the same as saving into a variable, except it's now takes no memory unless you want it.
Right.
So any questions about that before I turn the screen back over to you?
I think I get it. Yeah.
I see a question in the chat about how to proceed in a team that's agile, that says that they're agile and isn't. That's a big conversation. It's a little bit off topic. So I'm just going to plug this book. The Art of Agile Development, second edition, is all about that. And it's a book I put together. So yeah, check that out. So yeah, I want to make an equivalent of that output tracker. How do you think we should do that in Java?
I mean, we could do it a really cheap version, I think, of hand in a list from the outside that we add to in our notifier. And then you could just check the contents of the list. So that is really
and so we wouldn't even need the event,
right? I mean, basically, I mean, you know, what are events? It's something. I mean, it's not like we're not responding to each individual event. We're basically saying what is the accumulation of things that has happened since we started. And
would that code be able to erase the list?
It could clear it, yeah, because the list is mutable. So we can add to it and it can clear it. It can create its own if one isn't passed in.
Yeah, I'm trying to think why I didn't just do that in JavaScript, because that is simpler. And I think it's because I wanted the ability to just say track output and get an array back that was created for me, rather than I just wanted the developer experience of saying call track output parenthesis and get the response back. What you're saying is we create the list and then call track output.
Yeah, I mean, you could do the other way around. I mean, you could just say track output and it creates a list and you get that. But because it's sort of the same thing. It's who's responsible for creating the list.
It's kind of irrelevant.
Doesn't matter. And so if we
in a garbage collected language anyway, if we were using Rust, it would be different.
Well,
but
lots of things would be different. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, in this case,
we're not.
I mean, I think it's a reasonable starting point, and we can see what doesn't
let's
work.
Do that. And like a lot of stuff with nullables, there's some complexity, but the complexity is reused over and over again. So this nullable this output tracker we create, it's something that once it's created well, can be used and basically by anybody. You know, you could open source it and everybody could use it. It's not something that's custom in any way. It's just something.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is there's it's not quite event sourcing, but there's an aspect of sort of, at least in hexagonal, the coordination between let me back up a step. So let's say I have in my domain, my pure domain, something happens that I want somebody to know about and take action on. The application could say, hey, did X happen, right? Did we go over withdrawal event? That's great for it's very reminiscent of what we did here. It's very great. It's greatest if only one thing happens, or you only care about one thing. But if you care about multiple different things that are happening, you want to collect all of those. It's very much like this. Then the application asks the domain, hey, give me all the events since we started, so that I can use those and key off of each one and say, do I need to notify this service? Oh, this event I need to send to this service. This event I need to send this to this other service. And so it can coordinate it. And there's this common theme of that kind of thing is like tracking these changes and using that information in different ways.
Yeah,
so.
and like a lot of the stuff in the Nullables approach, we're doing this as properly tested code, so you can use it in your production code.
Right.
So, should we just start doing it in line and then factor out that output tracker class?
Yeah, let's do that.
So I think what we need to do is we need to change the test to say, rather than saying last role assigned, because I think I would like to get rid of that method.
Yeah, let me do a commit so that way people can see what this one was like. So what do I say here? Lying a bit to say that it was sent, but at least was asked to send.
I don't think events are correct in this case. Just ask what the last role assign.
Oops, dang it.
Ask HP notifier what last role assigned was sent. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Great. All right. So we want to get rid of the last role assigned.
So what we're going to do, can I drive for a second?
Sure.
So what we're going to do in our test is we're going to switch things around a little bit, in that we're going to have some sort of, I don't know if you're using a version of Java that supports the var keyword.
What version are we using?
Well, I'm just going to pseudocode this anyway.
We're using a lot, so it has var.
Okay, so we're going to say var tracker equals HTTP score category notifier dot track something. I usually track assignments, for example. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to, the way I usually do this in JavaScript is with a deep equal, which looks like this. Tracker.data, and then an array of objects. And in this case, our objects would be category. This is obviously not going to work in Java, but this just shows you the developer experience I'm looking for, because you're typically going to you're typically going to be doing a lot of literals. Right. So you want that to be really smooth and clean. Yep. And at least in JavaScript, creating a nested set of literals is super straightforward. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and hand the driver back to you. Yep. That's sort of what I'm aiming for with this. Okay. And then I'll let you figure out how to actually make that work.
So if this returns a list, the question is going to be list of what?
Well, it's going to be a list of T, because
well, we can generify it later.
Right.
Let's start with a concrete. I think the role assigned to category one is awkward to use, as we saw sort of here. But we could start there. So if this is a list of role assigned to category, which is a nested class, which is ugly, but for now we'll deal with that ugliness. Then track assignments returns that. Then the assertions, we can use the assert that contains, and then we just would use the from method or something similar. might have a, or just use this constructor since this takes the strings. So let's see what that looks like. Let's comment this out. Let's delete this. Actually, delete the thing. So track assignments, we'll go ahead and create that method on that thing.
I think, I don't think role assigned to category is ultimately what we're going to want here. Sorry, I was mucking around with Twitch's chat, so I may have missed something that you said. But I think what we're going to want is something that has a little bit better of a developer experience. So probably a custom object that has.
Yeah, we can create a value object that's basically just the role assigned to category that has the domain types as opposed to the strings.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's easy enough to do. So let's call it. Let's just call it role assignment. Assignment. Go ahead and create that. And we'll create that as class. That'll go here for now. Flop that over. So we're going to have a grab this.
We may have just identified a new domain concept.
You mean role assignment?
Yeah. Well, I don't think role assignment is the domain, is the name of it, but the mix of hand of dice, score, and score category is a domain concept, which is the results of a round. So I was thinking, I don't love that this is a separate class, but I also don't love that we've got a data clump in this class, in the notifier. Data clump, of course, being multiple.
So I was thinking that we would probably move this to domain and call this a value object.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Is what I was thinking. Yeah. Kura says records could be a good use case. Yeah, we're in Java 11, so we don't have records. Maybe we'll upgrade to Java 17 for a future stream, but for now this is fine.
And records, of course, are the read-only immutable or the immutable data type that
has a lot of it has a lot of syntactic sugar that makes it perfect for value objects like this. So let's go ahead and create the constructor. And let's go create.
Yeah, I've not used a version of Java that had supported records, but I really like the idea of them because I prefer immutable value types, and so they seem perfect for creating these value types. I believe it also does the equals method for you as well. Doesn't it?
Yeah, it basically does the equals in hash code for you, and a default toString, and makes the constructor much more compact. And basically all of what we see here, it basically does for you. I'm going to, and in fact, it uses my preferred naming scheme for the things that actually get those values. Because yeah, not Java 17, James Boone. We'll get that. We'll get that in the future.
I did a lot of Java programming back in the early 2000s. In fact, I was programming Java when they came out with the EJB spec. And I saw those getters and setters on the EJB spec, and I just like, what's wrong with you people? Like, don't you get it? Anyway, so
yeah,
I've been holding a grudge on that for about 20 years now, 23 years now.
I have a rant I do on that whole topic, and so a small presentation on where did getters and setters come from, why you want to use commands and queries, and why Aleb Holmes' article from 2003 about getters and setters being evil is still 100% true 20 years later, and it's
that was Alan Holmes.
Sad. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like, yeah. But it's Hibernate's fault that it got so popular. So
because Hibernate needed everything to be EJ or needed to be
Java Bean like, because Enterprise Java Bean took the name from Java Bean spec, which came out in '97, which were meant for tools. And okay, I won't go there.
Yeah. It wasn't EJBs I was shaking my fist at. It was actually just beans.
Yeah.
Because of course, the beautiful thing about object-oriented programming is encapsulation.
Right.
Like that is the amazing, beautiful thing about object-oriented programming. Not inheritance.
Nope.
Encapsulation.
Right.
The idea that your data and your functions that operate on your data live together.
Yep.
But as soon as you start exposing all your data like a drunk on Christmas Eve, I suppose I need to keep this family friendly, but you know what I mean. As soon as you start exposing all your data and spreading all that stuff around, you lose that encapsulation. And I saw Java Beans. I was like, this is
Java Beans were never meant. I know we're on this tangent, and I'm fine with that. Java Beans were never meant for human programmers to read and write. It was just, that was not its intention. Its intention was for automated tools to be able to use data. That was it. But Hibernate perverted that and said, oh, look, we can take advantage of this naming convention so that we can reflect on your code and automatically pull stuff out. It's like, no, that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
So, all right, so we've got...
So we need an equals and a hash code on this, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Let's go generate that. And these are all going to be non-null. Okay. And just for nice error messages, we'll create a toString. All right, and I'll fold those so we don't see them anymore. All right, so we got our value object. And I'm going to make this private again so we don't accidentally use it where it's not needed.
So I'm going to make a note. I don't know if we're going to get to it today, but I'm going to make a note to change role assign to use our new value object.
All right, so we got our tracker, track assignments, return null. So let's see what this looks like from our assertion standpoint. So if we assert that tracker contains only, and then we do new role assignment, what we're passing in is, let's see, will it help me? No, not that. Oops. Somebody's stealing my keystrokes. Okay. So we got score category 30 and illustrate. That's not score category. I would suggest that.
Is it the role that's first? Yeah. And we could make a convenience method, like a role assignment dot literal static factory method. But I don't know if it would be better.
It would be 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I usually create of methods like that, but I'm not sure what else we might need, so I'm going to defer that until we have a better sense of how to use it.
Yeah.
Welcome, Bruno Silva. So this will certainly fail because we're going to get a null pointer exception. And that's what we get. And should I make a pass?
Let's take a break.
Yes. Let's take a break.
A couple minutes, and we'll be back. Cliffhanger chat. How would you
stay tuned so you can see us how we fix this. All right.
Okay, so you're about to implement track assignments.
All right. So
I'm interested to see what you do here because I realized over the break why I wanted this to be event driven. And I think there's a flaw with I think there's something that making it event driven that you can only do if it's event driven. So, but I'm gonna keep that to
good.
myself.
Let's see
and see what happens.
Then we'll learn something, or at least I will. So I'm gonna first start with an empty list. Why are you not automatically importing that? Okay, so this should fail. So this is a technique I use, which is I haven't quite gone from red to green, but I've gone from red to a different red that's closer to the green that I want.
Actually, can I drive for a second?
Yeah.
Because I just realized looking at the code that this is how I programmed it back in the day before I made the generic output tracker. You actually have to start tracking assignments before, where am I? In the test. You have to start tracking the assignments before you do the roll. Otherwise, the tracker is not going to catch it, right? And so at that point, we can just assert that tracker is empty. I don't know what your syntax is here, but I'm going to assume that's correct.
Yep, that's correct.
And then we can actually have it be green to red. I'm going to hand back to you now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What's interesting is when I see this, to me that's a test smell that I'm missing the zero case for the test. That when I create the thing and ask it to track assignments, and then I don't do anything, I should expect 0 items.
That's right. And I think what we're going to want to do is when we make the output tracker class, we're going to want to have proper tests on that.
Yeah.
And at that point, we might split this one out. But
sure.
just in terms
for
of
now.
Yeah.
Let's see. How do we switch back to that? Okay. So this will pass.
Should pass.
Better pass.
Oh yeah, and this is not marked as IO, so it is actually running.
Yeah.
Even though it is IO, but that's okay.
Well, that's why we saw it fail, so we knew it was running.
Right.
So we'll leave that here, and now we'll turn this back on.
And I think that
do we need this anymore? Yeah, I think we can.
No, that was just pseudocode.
Yep. We've consumed that pseudocode. All right, so we expected it to fail because it's returning an empty list. So that is now. So now, let's do this. So roll assignment. Nope. Roll assignment. And then we're going to do assignment. New.
I think you needed that line.
I think I needed that line. Hold on. Oh, right. So this should be the local variable. So create local variable, because that's what we're doing. What we want to do is create a new thing, our role assignment.
I did get an email from somebody, from a viewer who watched one of the recordings of the stream, and they were asking why you didn't use var, the var keyword, instead of putting in the types. But it looks like it's just because that's what IntelliJ is doing for you, right?
Well, you can tell IntelliJ to use var. I don't use var because I find that you're in a language that is statically typed, and to me it's really important for the types to be present. If the type names get out of hand, then like if they get really complex, which is where var is, I think, really intended for, so intermediate stream stuff where the types are multiple generics, nested kinds of things, then sure, use a var. But I basically say we're in Java, everything has types, and I want to know what those types are without having to press an extra key to say, hey, what is this type?
I see. I see where you're coming from, and I agree with it. On a situation like line 25, where we're basically repeating the type name twice, I'd be okay using var.
Yeah, I don't do that, clearly.
That's okay.
Okay, and so here, what I can do is a list of little assignment.
That I don't think will work. Because what's happening here is when we do the track assignments, we're getting the list with everything already in it. But what we need the list to do is be mutated over time as new things come in.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get just the one case running, and then we can generalize it. But it is.
Yeah. But you got to go from the empty case to the one case. I mean, what you're going to need to do.
Yeah, so
you have to store the list off, not the role assignment.
Yeah, mainly it's because this test is checking it before anything is added.
But that is the actual behavior we want. We want it to mutate as things are added.
Yep. And let's do that. So. Make that file. All right. There we go. That works.
Okay. So I'm going to write another test for you.
All right.
And I expect this one to pass. And this, by the way, is why we have this all in one test, because we're testing that mutability behavior.
All right.
Okay, back to you.
This is the wrong score, but that's not what we're testing, so it's fine.
Oh, it's supposed to be 30, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like, oh, that's a bad example because the 30 is the same.
Oh, yeah. Make it 5s then.
I'm gonna make it 5s.
Yeah, I thought there were 6 dice, but of course there's not.
Yeah. So
what keystroke did you use just now?
Oh, this is the magic multi-caret. So
right. I know about the caret, but I've only been able to do it by doing control click, so I never use it because it's so tedious.
On Mac, it's Control G. So it takes whatever selected and basically, in a sense, does a forward search, and then selects that. And
I'm going to use that so much.
It is, and I show this every time, and like, people, what did you just do? Because also in IntelliJ, each caret has its own clipboard. So you can copy from multiple 3 things and then paste them in 3 different other places if you had 3 selections, and it will be, each caret has its own sort of local clipboard, and it's just
all right.
So awesome. So I hardly ever use search and replace because I'm always doing it with and I just basically said 25, not 30. So yeah.
Score category should be 5s.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we're enforcing it at this level.
No, but at least have it be like, I don't like people looking at tests and saying, what?
Yeah, exactly.
There's already enough that they have to worry about. Okay. I think this will pass.
Yeah, I think it will pass because you've got the add.
Yeah, we already generalized it here. Oh. Because it doesn't contain only. So this is.
Oh, right.
This is invalid.
It needs to contain both of them.
Yeah. So. There we go. There we go. That passes.
Okay, I got another test for you.
All right.
And this is the one where it's a real dick move. I can warn you. Okay, let's see. We're going to track it. And these tests can probably be improved, but there you go. Back to you.
Let's see. So you're saying so tracker 1, track assignments, tracker 2. So basically it starts tracking when you say track assignments.
That's right.
But only for that tracker.
Like I said, real dick move. But in order for this to be production grade code, I think this is necessary. Also, remember, one of our requirements is that we don't actually use any memory until we call the tracker. And the way it's coded right now, that's not true. In fact, this would have a memory leak if the way it's coded now.
Let's see. So yeah, I don't see any other way other than creating a new list each time track assignments is called.
Mm-hmm.
So the simplest way would be have a bunch of lists. We add to all the lists. They're going to be shallow copies. But yeah, the lists are going to use up some memory. I'm not going to worry too much about memory right now.
Well, I'm going to put that out there as that's part of the requirement. So let me short circuit this. The solution is events and observables. If you set this up so that the track assignments creates a list, listens for the event, and then adds to the list. Java has closures, doesn't it?
Depending on how you want to use them. It has lambdas, which can enclose information.
Well, classes and closures are kind of interchangeable if you use them correctly. So basically, if you create an instance that upon construction listens for an event, and has a data method that returns the the underlying list, then what happens is every time the event occurs, that list is modified, and each one of them is independent. So we need a separate class, which is where the track output class
So I'm not sure that uses up any less memory.
Well, you only create the instance when track assignments is called. Whereas right now, role assignments is created upon construction and added to on line 28 every time we were to assign a role, regardless of if we've ever tracked assignments.
Right, but I can do that with a list of lists.
You can.
Yeah.
Try it. I mean, maybe it won't be as ugly as I think it will be.
I mean, it's not going to be pretty code. But I think I mean,
does Java not have built-in support for observable pattern? I thought it did.
It has. There is some stuff around property listeners and so on, but that's very much embedded more in the swing code, and it's basically meant for something else. It doesn't have sort of a general purpose event kind of thing, which is why people keep reinventing it, and I've reinvented it myself because
it's not hard.
It's not hard, and
it's
it's just like, well, I don't want to bring in this entire big library just to get this tiny little thing. But let me try this and see if this does what I think it will do. So I'm going to create and this is probably more code than I would write all at once, but let's try it. So I'm going to do a set of list of role assignment. And so that's going to be a new set of whatever. And it's going to be a hash set. And I need to give it a variable. I'm going to call them listeners just to keep with a conceptual idea. Then this goes away. Track assignments does this. And then role assignment listeners add role assignments. Turn that. And then here, where'd my cursor go? Here we're going to do, whoops. Just clean up the indents here. So here we're going to do, what do I call them? Role assignment listeners for each. And for each one, we're going to say, this is the list, role assignments, and then we just wrap that.
Yeah.
So I think that'll do what we want. Yeah. I have to say there's always this sense of like, wow, that was actually like conceptually for me, like, because I can't hold much in my brain these days. Like I really feel like I was walking out on a tightrope.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, that's basically a non-generic version of an event listener.
Yeah, I mean that's it's clear. I would never leave it this way. Like I'd be like, because I'm all about like, wow, that's a lot of like, the code isn't complex. There's not a lot of lines of code, but conceptually, it's like, what the heck is this doing?
Right.
Is why I would want to encapsulate it to provide.
Well, and I have more tests that I could. I have more tests I could add to this, but I think we're ready to pull this out into an OutputTracker generic.
Yeah.
So, do you want to do that within this file first? Like pull out a class from this file, or do you want to just do it into another file?
Let's pull it out into another file.
Okay.
So how do we want to do that?
So we need track assignments. Maybe we can genericize it a little bit here first. Line 29 should be a method call.
And what we want.
It needs to take a role assignment, not the other stuff.
Let's do that out first. Never want that in the container block. The names it comes up with.
Yeah. I would say emit.
Sounds good. And then I can basically all right. So what we want to end up with emit being generic.
Mm-hmm.
So let's, I don't want to do that.
This is where we're going to put the bracket T bracket in front of the method.
I think it'd be easier at this point to pull it out into a class and then
yeah, because we're going to use the same type throughout.
Yeah,
I agree.
So what do we want to call the class? Just going to go and create one.
I call it OutputTracker in my code. And it's sort of a generic utility thing that's only used by adapters. So I don't know what that tells you about where to put it.
That actually tells me it's going to go here. So OutputTracker. And so what we want is...
I wonder if it'd be easier to see this if you put the output tracker on the right and the notifier on the left, or vice versa.
Actually, I'm going to see if we can split it, move it down. Well, I guess we're not writing tests yet. So let's move.
Yeah, we can rely on our existing tests to begin with and then move them over. So it probably should be an output tracker of type T.
Yes. So I'm gonna we'll use T.
Or we could just because if we keep a role, I mean, we could just stick with it being specific to role assignment for the initial refactoring and then genericize it.
Yeah, because actually I'm curious if IntelliJ will help us on that. So so what we want is pretty much the behavior it's got, right? So
we want emit track assignments. Well, track assignments is going to create the output tracker. Emit is going to be in the output tracker, and line 20, the variable, that's going to be part of output tracker as well.
Yeah. So this is this. I'm just going to rename this to listeners. And let's see if this works. So I'm going to see if I can get IntelliJ refactoring to help me on this. We're going to have a private final output tracker. Tracker.
Yeah, you're going to want to create it there.
Yeah. And then what I can do is this this is OutputTracker dot listeners. So bear with me. Tracker. So this should still be the same.
Yep.
It's actually an automated refactoring to get to this step, which was introduce delegate, but I forgot to do that. So it was a manual step. And now what we can do is
why don't you move the emit over?
Yep. Let's see if this does what I want it to do.
I'm impressed that it knew
Yes.
which class to give you as an option.
And we don't need that. So a better way is let's put this. Oops. Come on. Nope, not that button. Just parameter. I don't know why it gave me that warning. Totally.
So I
fine.
Yeah, what's
And now parameter. Okay. So we got output tracker emit.
I think your test.
Whoops! I didn't want
I think it moved it over.
Yeah, actually, I didn't want to move track assignments.
You just want to delegate to, like, you want to copy it and then delegate.
So what I want is, what do we want to call?
Names are a little bit awkward right now. Let's call it create tracker.
Okay. Then I can take
and that
this one and move it. Oh, this is the stupid bug. So IntelliJ, I don't know what they were thinking, but they made, in certain situations, actually it was supposed to be fixed in this release. I'm going to have to file a bug. It made it static when I extracted it. It's like, no, I don't want it static.
Yeah, remember how in one of our previous streams I said, yeah, you've got a mix of static functions and not static? It's because of that bug.
Yeah.
We just didn't see it.
And it was supposed to be fixed in this release, but it's not.
Okay, this should pass.
Yeah, so this should still pass. Oh. What did I lose? That. Oh, that was my mistake for.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Okay. There we go. So output tracker now looks like this. And I think we can we generify it? Will it do that for us? No, it won't do it for us. So we want to generify.
Well, let's make it private first.
Yeah, let's do that.
That one should be, those should be public. Just the line 11 should be private.
Let's make sure nobody's accessing it. Yep, that's fine.
So yeah, now we should be able to just convert role assignment to a T. Oh wait, how are we adding? Oh, we're calling emit there. Yep, we should be able to just convert that to a T, I think.
Yeah, so let's see. Will it offer to do that here? No. All right. Let's replace role assignment.
Oh, I love that keystroke. That's so awesome.
And then this is going to be T. And then here, This is going to be T, not T. This one has to be the role assignment.
Right.
And that should still work.
You're missing your closing chevron.
Oops, you're right. So you call that a chevron. It's always interesting.
A chevron.
Yeah, it's always interesting though. Like when I'm pairing and mobbing with folks, it's like, what do you call this thing? What do you call this thing? And like people have like parens and curly braces. Apparently Canadians have different terms for those.
And to be honest, I don't know where that came from because I almost always call it angle bracket.
Yeah.
But this time chevron.
I knew what you meant. So but it was funny. All right, that all works. Squiggles, yeah.
Yeah, squiggles.
So that all works. So we got a nice output tracker. T add return for each.
I don't know if you want to check in or not.
I was thinking I want to check in.
Yeah, I've got some more. We need to move our tests over, and then I have some more things to add.
So let's see what we got. So yeah, so this is basically the event tracking.
Yeah, I don't remember what basically the same message you put last time, except this is the good version.
Can I ask notifier
to track last role assigned?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So Camelia says 2 list role assignments with the same values cannot exist in the output tracker set. Oh, that's a good point because set is unique. Will that matter?
No, because it's a set of unique references. All the references are unique.
Yeah, it's going to use the hash code of the list, which I believe is going to be different because they're different instances. Yeah.
I would probably use a list rather than a set, though, personally.
Yeah, I think I did that originally just to differentiate it when I was coding it so that I didn't get confused. But we can just change this to a list.
But so I've got some stuff I want to do because I don't think we're quite there yet. Go ahead and make this change, and then I want to talk about that.
Yep. And I'm just going to amend it.
Cademlia says that ArrayList has the same hash code for the same data. Is that true?
I'd have to look at the implementation.
Yeah, that seems unlikely to me because that means calculating the hash would mean traversing the entire list.
I'll leave it to one of our viewers to go look up the spec on that.
Yeah.
All right.
But list is definitely more correct than set here.
Yeah.
So. Okay. So what we're doing now is we're returning a list. I think probably what we want to do next is create tests for OutputTracker and move our test over. But after we do that, what we want to do is we want to be able to do things like consume. We could continue to return a list. The way I've done this in JavaScript is I've made the equivalent of create tracker return a data type of its own that has off and consume on it. Off turns off the output tracking, and you need that to prevent memory leaks in production. And consume, we couldn't just call that directly on the list, but the value of consume is that what it does is it erases the list. And you're going to want to do this because let's say you're tracking a log. And so you call something and it dumps out a whole bunch of log stuff. Then you consume it, or clear it, maybe a better term.
Yeah.
And then you call the thing that you care about and look at the log again. That way you don't have to worry about all this cruft that's in your log.
Right.
I use this pattern, this technique for testing my logs really, really frequently.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, and I'm generally not fond of returns that are immutable. Mm-hmm. That's already bad. Even though nobody else keeps track of it, it's sort of, but and then you basically just have it you don't know what it does or what its capabilities are. So
yeah, but it's not what we've called output tracker here is not the output tracker. Create tracker is the output tracker. This is the output listener or output tracker listener or creator or something like that. Like this is the equivalent of the event emitter in my code, which was built into JavaScript.
So should we call this yeah, I think it is a listener.
Yeah, on line 6 you mean?
Yeah,
output listener.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And that really ties in with what you had said. I mean, before when you created this, the equivalent of this field, you called it listeners, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that line 19 should be changed to be already done. Good.
Yep.
So yeah, let's go ahead and pull over before we create the new class. Let's go ahead and pull the test over so we can start test driving it.
All right. So let me move this over here. All right. What do we want to call these? Because they're just T's.
Yeah, this is just emit data.
Oops. And then these are
trackers.
Well, this is a tracker?
A tracker, sure.
Because this is eventually going to be output tracker, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now that we have it generified, we can write some simpler tests against it.
Yeah.
So let's do... Should I copy these tests and simplify them, or should we just start from scratch?
That's what I would do. I would just copy.
Okay.
I would copy that test file and start deleting stuff.
Okay.
That entire test can go away.
Yeah. Okay. And then this is event data is tracked.
Tracks event data. Tracks output.
All right.
So line 18 should create the output listener.
Listener. What are we going to use for our type T? Could use string.
Yeah, let's just use string. Makes our life easy.
We'll call this listener. Listener. Yeah, we're going to delete that anyway. Okay, so string. This is the tracker. This is output listener. Oh, actually, yeah, output listener. This is just
create tracker.
Create tracker. Do we want to put this 0 case in its own test?
No.
Okay.
And the reason is that we need to see it mutate. So line 17 should actually say tracks output over time.
Okay. So is that the okay? Yep. So this is going to be and so here we're going to emit.
So now we need to say tracker.emit. One. Like the word one.
Oh, sorry. I'm like, why am I not getting the method? Because I'm calling on the wrong object.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I said tracker. That was my bad. Yeah, and then tracker should contain only one. And then we'll do it again and see that it contains 1 and 2.
Yes. It's 2. All right.
Yeah.
So let's see if this passes. Yep.
Okay. And then the second one, basically the same thing again.
Yeah. Tracker 1. This is tracker 2. This is output listener, create tracker. This is output listener, emit 2. So tracker 1 should contain only 1. Tracker 2. No. This is 1 and 2. I can't seem to spell. I don't know why. And this one should only contain 2.
Yep.
So I just want to double check contains only. I always get confused between contains only and contains exactly. So this is only the given values and nothing else in any order. Do we care about order?
We do care about order, so it should be contains exactly.
Then it should be exactly.
Oh, you can use your magic Control G.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that exactly, nothing else in order. Okay, great.
Tell you, I'm using this keystroke forever. Okay, that should pass.
All right. It does.
And let's go ahead and go into the HttpScoreNotifier tests. And delete the second test, or the last test in this file.
This one, the multiple independent trackers?
Yeah.
Okay.
And simplify the first one. We don't need the assert is empty.
Right.
We just really need the original code. Yeah.
Do we need this?
44 on down can go away.
Yeah.
And because oh, it's called a notifier. Good. Okay. I was just noticing that you had the word track on line 15 as well, 16. Role assignment set to tracker. That's a little confusing. Service?
Sure. External service?
Yeah. Okay, and then if we go back to output listener test, I think I had another name I wanted to change in there. Role assignment tracking supports multiple independent trackers. Oh yeah, that's it.
Oh, this is not role assignment.
Trackers are, I think just trackers are independent is what I would call that. Yeah.
All right.
Let's check that in.
Yeah.
And then we're ready to make it a little more complicated.
So we active output. Are we going to make this now? And is that the next step to make this a type, the tracker itself?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what we've done is we've just extracted the output listener test or moved the output listener test or something like that. Because we already had the output listener. It was just the test that we worked on this time.
Retargeted tests from notifier test.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
All right.
Now might be a good time to take another break.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be back in a few, folks. All right. And we're back.
Okay.
And I double checked ArrayList do test for equality of contents.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they actually have some optimizations around that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I would not have expected that. So thanks for checking it.
Yep. I thought it was that way. And then I was like, wait, is it that way? And so what I wanted was somebody to have the link to the specification for ArrayList, but nobody did that. So
right. So let me toss down another pseudocode
all right.
Test for you. Okay. So are you following me?
Yep.
Okay. The test that I want to support next is can stop tracking output.
Okay.
And I'm going to start out by taking this and reformat that. We got an output listener. We're going to create the tracker. We don't care about when it's empty. We're going to say tracker.off or stop. I don't care what we call it. Then we're going to emit another one, and we're going to assert that it only ever got the one. So back to you.
Okay. Can you turn it back on, or is it basically a latch, and once it's off forever? Not that that matters. I was just curious.
You know, I've never run into a need to turn it back on after you turn it back off. In fact, I don't think I've ever used the ability to turn it off, but because it's production grade code, you want to have the ability to turn it off in theory.
All right.
But yeah, can it be turned back on? I don't think so. I don't think I've ever done that.
I was just asking just to make sure the name matched, sort of like pause would have been my suggestion if you could unpause it, but if it's basically like just stop.
Yeah, stop maybe even might stop be a better term than off.
Yeah.
I think I called it off because in JavaScript, event emitters use on to listen for an event and off to stop listening for an event. So I was doing that. Okay. But I like stop better as a name, actually.
All right. So
I think you'll need to disable that test temporarily, because in order to support this, we've got to no longer return list of T for create tracker.
Yeah, we're going to need to do some preparation refactoring. So let's make sure we're back to passing tests. There we are. A little nervous that we've got 3 disabled tests.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I'm a little nervous. I was like, we have 3 disabled tests, and I'm not sure like this one, I know why we're disabling it. The other two, I'm not so sure anymore. I might want to
I
clean.
don't remember which other tests we have disabled, if any. Did we do that this time?
I don't know, and that's why I was like, what are those disabled for? So we'll check that out in a bit. But let's focus on this. So we want the create tracker to return something that wraps this list.
Yeah, so, I would say output tracker, for example.
What a great name.
Yeah.
So let's create output tracker here. Go ahead and create that class.
I think that should probably be an inner class.
Yeah, my fingers hit the button before my brain said maybe that should be an inner class.
Yeah, and not a static one, because it's going to need a reference back out to the output listener.
And so it's going to be new output tracker. It's going to be of type output tracker. I want to change this tracker.
Actually, maybe it can be static. Well, we'll see what happens with it.
That should be reach tracker. That should be tracker. And that should be, do we want to continue to call it add? Or is it also a sort of emit?
No, I think it's add in this case.
Okay.
But I think it should be private, or whatever the most restrictive form of private security is. I think you can call private methods in a inner class, right?
This way I don't say static. Yeah, if we say static, then it doesn't know the type of data. That's fine. This should be T. Right? Because that's what it's tracking. So this is also T. Can you generify that for us? No, you're not going to do that. Okay. Okay. This can't be private, but it can be default access.
Are you sure about that?
No, I'm not.
Way back in the day when I was doing a lot of Java programming, I did some really nasty things with inner classes, and that included taking advantage of the fact that you could.
I know you could go the other way. I didn't think you could go from outside to in, but I guess it owns it. So yeah, I don't do it a lot that way, but all right.
Well, I did say that it was nasty. Like, that was 20 years ago, and it's still stuck with me to this day. I would never program my code the way I did that again. I did it was sort of a poor man's ORM, because this was in 2000, and ORMs were not really polished for Java at that point. Right. So we ended up building our own.
So let's see, output tracker, listeners, add tracker, return tracker. That looks good. Add, we'll have to we're basically putting the list in here. List T output. Oh, okay. It's not required. We're going to need
a. I've been calling it data. An accessor method called data, which basically gives us will return the list. But we could also call it output.
I kind of prefer output.
Okay.
And not public. What's the T? Put. Just a defensive copy because I'm always
works for me.
And so this is of type that.
Yeah, so we might not want that to be an inner class for this reason.
That's horrible. I was going to say that's not horrible, but it is.
It's horrible. It's horrible. I think we want it to be. It's going to have to be a public file, a public class, so it's going to have to be in its own file, I think.
So let's move it up.
Which means that private void add will have to not be private.
Yep. So let's go ahead and make this. We can make a package private, so at least it stays within the package. Yeah. So let's go there. Okay. So then this becomes that. And this is tracker.output. What is it? Let's see. Yeah, okay. It's an auto-completing it for some reason. So output listener of type string, output listener tracker, create a tracker for string, emit. So that should work.
Hey, Purple Elf.
Purple Elf. Thank you so much for the raid. Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, welcome.
You caught us at the tail end. We still got another 40 minutes. We're doing some pair programming in Java, and this is a yacht dice game, and so we're James is showing us how he does things for what are called nullables, nullable infrastructure wrappers. In this case, we're doing some stuff to make it easy to track sort of what happens to something else. So welcome. Thank you for bringing your family here, Purple Elf. So let's see. So this should still just work, except for compile errors and this stuff. Yeah. So let me copy and paste that, which will cause us to have to fix.
We might need them in our HttpScoreCategoryNotifier as well.
That's probably true.
Oh, and all of our trackers need to be tracker.output.
So this is okay. That was easy. And down here, this can be tracker of type string, and then this one. Okay. Yes, we are the light theme channel.
That's right. Come to the light. Seek the light.
It's funny. I saw on Hacker News another reference to like dark mode and light mode, and everybody's trying to appeal. Like I sort of made this mistake trying to appeal to like science, and it's like it really depends on what your environmental context is. If it's nighttime and everything is dark, yes, light mode looks like a bright shining star. But if you're in a well-lit environment, then dark mode feels like everything is reflecting back at me and I can't see anything. So
yeah, my environment, I definitely can see light mode better than dark mode.
Yeah,
because it's very well lit because I'm on camera, right? So I've got lots of lights.
Yeah,
and I've got a good monitor. I can turn the contrast down, or I can turn the brightness down. So what are we missing?
So track assignments, I just need to fix this to be, instead of list role assignment, we want this to be output tracker. Was that made package private? It was, so I can't do that. So output tracker.
Do we need to fix it? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I'll have to say make it public. And then all of its callers are going to be wrong.
Just that one. And line 37 as well.
And then this is tracker.data.
See, .data is really, it's pretty natural.
Now I'm only saying data because you said that before. It was anchored on that.
At least it's easy to refactor.
Yeah. Yeah, so Purple Elf, this is why I have a channel redemption for switching to dark mode.
Which, now that we're not switching back and forth, now that we're using code together to do the pairing, you could turn that back on for the next stream.
Yeah. Oh no, actually it's already on. So somebody could have invoked it, but nobody with enough channel points. Wheatlaw's not here, so he didn't do it.
That's right.
He's got like, I don't know.
He's the one who attends purely so he can turn you into dark.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's not. Maybe he is here and we don't see him. All right. So all our tests pass. Track assignments is OutputTracker creates the tracker of the right type.
So somebody just redeemed dark mode, by the way.
Of course. Oh, Esco.
You spoke too soon.
I was really kind of baiting the lurkers. So let's go ahead.
How do you track the time on that? Thank Escoho. Many people will thank you.
Let's see, Darkula. How do I track it? I track it this way. I grab my dark mode timer for 10 minutes. And that's how I know. And then what happens is the timer counts down and says dark mode ended, and nobody tells me, and I go for another 5-10 minutes.
Well,
that's fine.
I'm here now, and it's very weird to me because I have never used dark mode. Like I just tend to use whatever the default is. So when I'm using VS Code, it's of course always in dark mode, but I have never used IntelliJ in dark mode because the default I think is light mode. And
not anymore. If you do a new install, they've gone for its fashion, and now the new install is dark mode.
I see. Like, well, I installed, all my configuration is from a long time ago. I won't say how long, but a long time ago. And so I've never seen this color scheme. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, anyway, it takes some getting used to. All right, so now we actually want to do the off or start.
Are all of our tests passing now?
Well, let's all of our tests are passing now.
Okay.
So let's enable this.
Turn that on.
And create this, which we will do nothing. And now it should fail because it's still tracking. So we should have 1, 2.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Now, how do I make this work?
We've got to tell the output listener to remove the output tracker. Which is why I originally was thinking we keep these in the same file, we'll have it be interclass because they're very tightly coupled. I mean, it's easy to do. We just pass in a reference to the output listener, and we have a package private remove that we pass ourselves in. But it feels wrong to me, like it's this weird circular dependency, which would definitely get me fired if I was programming in, say, C++. But it's a garbage collected language, so we can do it. And from a developer experience perspective, this is the correct way to do it. Like, we don't want to call it on output.
No, because then you don't want to have to hold on to two things.
Right. We don't want to expose it.
I mean, how would you feel if we wrapped this with are we on or not and keep it local to here? Well,
the whole point is that when we turn it off, we release the memory. So I want to jettison it and have the garbage collector collect it.
But if the holder is still holding on to it, even if we've called stop, then it still has a reference and it won't get garbage collected.
Right. So the reference chain is that our category notifier contains a listener which contains all the trackers. So as long as the notifier is alive, all of our trackers will stay alive unless we remove them from the listener.
Yep. Yep. All right. So let's go back to our output listener. So when we create the tracker, we will have to pass in a reference to this. And let's go create that constructor.
Could we make it, rather than making it a public output tracker, if we put it in the output listener file, then it would just be protected, right? And it would not, even though we're returning it. It's just these are so tightly coupled, I really want them to live next to each other rather than being in two separate files. But I don't know if
so output tracker can't be public and also in the same class unless it's an inner class.
Right. Well, I wasn't saying in the same class. I was saying
in the same file.
Yeah, I was saying non-public. If it's not public, can we still reference it as a return value from another thing?
No, then
we just can't reference.
We can't reference it. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so we can either do it this way, or we can live with the or we'd have to live with the declaration being of an inner class type.
We're going to use this a lot more than we're going to touch it. So
yeah. So
I'm fine with them. And also, we don't have anything else at the adapter level in your source tree, so having them be right next to each other with very similar names, I think that also conveys that they're tightly coupled.
Yeah, I mean, if there was ever more stuff, then I just put it in a subpackage called output tracker or output listener, and be fine with that.
Okay, works for me.
So now we are going to need to hold on to this. And that can also be final. And then we want some kind of
remove
this. This feels so wrong, but yeah.
It does feel wrong.
But
it does feel really wrong. Yeah. This, by the way, remember I said my homegrown ORM did terrible things with inner classes? This was why. Because I'd had this kind of relationship. And eventually I got rid of it entirely because it was a terrible design. But it was really clever for a while. That's when I eventually ended up moving to the, what's the name of that ORM pattern? You told it to me recently.
Oh, Memento?
Memento, yeah. We moved to the Memento pattern.
Yeah.
Before that, we had something called forklifts, which basically gave access to the private data without actually exposing getters and setters.
Oh, God.
And it abused the fact that you could return the inner class that had access to the private variables.
Yes. And it's funny how that problem comes up again and again. Like there's like C++ has friend. I don't know a lot about it, but this idea of giving this other class public access, but nobody and it could be in some other package, but like this pipe to this other thing, that would be really nice.
I think
I'm sure it would be horrible, but
we called those inner classes, forklifts was a never concept that came later. We called those inner classes persistence friends because, after the C++ concept.
Right.
I was a team lead when I did that, and I went away to a conference, and I came back, and they were like, either this goes or you go. So we came up with a better solution.
Yeah. All right. So we think this will pass.
No, we don't think we programmed the remove yet, have we?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you did? I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Just too quick.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we're done.
Okay. It's going to bug me, and I'm going to have to, and it's probably going to be some background process in my head of like, how else would I do this? Would I pass in something? I don't know. I'll let that sit in the background.
Yeah. The JavaScript version is simpler, and that's because I've got the built-in event emitter function. Really, our output listener is an event system, an event tracker.
Yeah.
So, there is one other thing we have to add. We need to. Can I drive for a second?
Yeah,
Give you another test.
I think I can change that so it doesn't have to be
This is gonna have to be
public.
light. Oh no, it's mine is light mode, but you're seeing it on yours, so that should be fine.
Yeah.
So can stop tracking output, tracks output over time, and then last but not least, it clears output. And we liked clear better than consume, right?
Yes. At least I did.
Okay, back to you.
So emit one, we clear. Okay. Create that. Do nothing. That should fail because we're not doing anything. So we'll get 1 and 2 instead of just 2. Yep. And that should work.
And then I would like clear to come before stop because it just seems to me like that's the right logical order is output, clear, and stop. But I'm not strongly, if you don't agree, I don't feel that strongly about it.
I don't feel strongly, so I'll do it.
Okay.
I do feel like add needs to be at the end, but I don't feel strongly about that either. I know some people like sort of the public stuff at the top and less public below that.
No, I think add conceptually happens before output, so
yeah.
I kind of want to have it be at top.
Yeah, I don't.
Although again, I don't care that much.
Yeah, I don't care too much either because I don't. I agree. Like, sort of when I'm looking at the class, I'm more concerned with how does this thing work versus anything else. Because from the outside, order doesn't matter because you're just going to autocomplete anyway.
Yeah. So we got comments about the dark mode. Has our time run out yet?
Yes, our time is out.
Oh, okay. It doesn't go into the chat, so I don't get notified.
No, it basically just displays in the overlay that dark mode is over.
I see.
And so they get a little extra out of that. Switch back.
It's funny, being in a different color scheme actually makes it harder for me to understand what's going on because my brain is just spending a little bit more time processing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting.
It's
so yeah, I think we're done.
matching.
I think we can commit this.
Yeah.
So we added OutputTracker dot clear and stop. I mean, we also factored out OutputTracker from output listener, but really the behavior we've added is the ability to clear and stop the output tracking.
All right.
Okay. So yeah, I think we can close those files down. Let's take another look at HttpScoreCategoryNotifier and see what it looks like. Do you mind making that window bigger? So we've got the output listener. We emit to the output listener. And then we track the assignments. And that's the way it should be. I mean, from now on, whenever you want to make something trackable, it should just literally be those 3 lines of code. One to create the instance, one to emit, and one to return the tracker.
Right.
Now, in my code, I have sometimes you can track multiple things. Like, for example, I have an IO adapter that will track input, will track output, and will track everything together, which is handy for debugging in my tests. I think, and the way I do that in my code is with one event emitter with multiple event names. But I think for you, what we do is we just create multiple listeners if we wanted to track multiple things.
Yeah, I mean,
there's really no need to have them all be together in one.
Yeah, I mean, basically you would just sort of generify what the tracker holds that it holds. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to see how it was used to know if there's...
I think we're good the way it is. Okay. Like, what I had to do in that case is, yeah, I've only got one event emitter, but now I've got these constants that say I'm emitting this event whenever I emit. So I think actually the way you're doing it here is cleaner. That you can say, this is the listener that's being fired. We're going to emit to that listener. Okay, well, we've got about 30 minutes left. The next thing to do would be to make this nullable. We've done that before, so we should be able to just do it. We'll have to reuse a bunch of our REST template stuff, I think.
Yeah, although this one is a different type of it, but we should be able to mostly copy, paste, adjust. So let me...
So yeah, for those of you watching who haven't seen this before, what we're doing here is we've got this HttpScoreCategoryNotifier, which is an adapter around an external web service. And I'm just going to talk while you go, Ted, because it's pretty rote. And we're making it. We're following a pattern called Nullables. We're making the HttpScoreCategoryNotifier nullable, which means we can create it in a mode that doesn't actually talk to the service, but works just like the real thing in every other respect. And that's why we put the tracker on it, is we wanted to have a way of seeing that it tried to talk to the outside service, whether it did or not, so that our test could make assertions about whether it talked to the outside service without going out and looking at the outside service. And we do have tests around that now, and they work. So all that's left to do is to make that nullability happen so that we can have tests that don't actually try to talk to the outside service. They'll run faster. They won't require us to spin up the test, so they'll be more, won't require us to spin up the service, so they'll be more reliable, and so forth. Did I summarize that correctly, Ted?
I think so. So what we're going to want here is... So this is going to be... It's going to be a little bit easier because we're just wrapping the post for entity.
Because it's not going to return.
Because it's not going to return, so it's actually going to be quite a bit.
Yeah, it'll be super simple.
In fact, it won't have any return. It will be a void post for entity, which still takes a URL, still takes a class.
I think you're going to need the T on it.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to need the T here.
I think it's, yeah.
And wait,
where is it? Is it in front? I think it may be in front.
Right, there it is. Yep. And class response, and this is not URI variables, but what do they call it? Actually, let me just go to it. That's the request. That's the class 2. That's the response type. So that's our interface.
We don't need that throws REST client exception either. I guess we should keep it, though. That's just because that's the way the real thing is implemented.
Yeah, I was deciding if I wanted to delete it, but I think since that's the real thing, I don't think it matters.
No, I don't think it does.
It is a runtime.
Yeah, I would leave it just because
Yeah.
we want to mirror the real interface.
So URL
exactly.
request response type. Okay, so then this is REST template wrapper.
And real REST template type name.
Sorry, say again.
Real REST template. No, that's correct. New real REST template.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. That's what I thought you meant, but I heard something different. And so let's go ahead and create... No, I don't want to import that one. That. So... Oops. Sorry, my cursor just jumped somewhere else. And so the real one is just gonna do that. Okay, so that
should work.
That should still just work.
Of course, we'd have to test it manually to know if it did.
Yeah, so I'm going to actually test it manually. Yeah, all we expect is it doesn't throw an exception, so that's fine. Okay. And okay. So now we need, just like we had here, it's not going to be a stubbed. What do you want to?
Yeah, it will be.
Is it stubbed? Yeah, I mean, I think of stubs as returning something. Is this returning anything?
I don't think stubs have to return something. So it's stubbed, but it's not going to return anything because, or it's going to return everything that it's supposed to return, which is nothing. So, yeah. To me, a stub just means a class that doesn't do the thing, or doesn't do what the real thing does. It doesn't do anything. And I actually don't see the returning values as being the important part of the stub. It's actually not doing anything, but makes it a stub.
So I look at it differently. If it doesn't do anything, then it's a dummy.
Yeah, I don't use that term. I just call everything stubs.
Okay.
If you want to call it a dummy REST template, then that's fine with me.
Because when I talk about stubs, I talk about it in context of what is your code that's under test expecting from the stub. Mm-hmm. What's the value? What's the information? State. So sort of state reading as opposed to just ignoring it. Okay. So let's implement this. Implement methods. And it's going to do nothing, right?
There's nothing in there.
And so now we want a create.
Yeah, we should do this test driven.
Yeah. So where do we want to drive it from?
Actually, no, we can't really test drive it because we don't have any integration tests. So we can't, like, if we had an integration test, we could create the null, track it, and then assert that the service didn't have anything in it. But because we don't have that, then there's nothing to test. So I'd say just implement it.
Okay.
Because it will be tested by all the things that use it regardless.
So let's create a constructor. So what are the usages of this? Yeah, just in here. So we want create null, and we want REST template dummy-rest template. That not final for now.
That's create null needs to be static, so that's not going to work.
Oops. Oh, right, yes. So what we want actually is that.
Yeah.
Takes that.
So you might as well make line 18 private or final again.
Yeah. And so let's create the constructor. And this is
we call that just REST template.
Yeah. Let's create the other constructor. Okay. That, and then this template. That. So this one, template, real. Okay.
Okay, that should still pass, right?
Yeah. And I'm going to turn this one off. Or on, I guess. So that still works. And then all the other tests should still pass.
And then what we can do is we can modify line 26 to use .createNull.
Yep. And that should... What's that going to do? That should still work. Yep.
Cool. And now, if you turn off your service, that test should still pass.
So by turn off, do you mean disable this code?
No, I mean like
up
until now, that test has been hitting your actual service. And it's
you're
working
right.
because the service is running.
I see. I see what you meant. Service was ambiguous. So
yeah.
So if we enable this one should fail, and this one should pass. So let's see what happens.
Right. Yeah. There we go.
Yep. error. Yep. And this one passes fine. Okay.
Okay. Let's commit this, and then we're not quite done. I want to add the create for symmetry.
Yep.
I would just say made HttpScoreCategoryNotifier nullable.
Sure. Not going to autocomplete. All right. And so we wanted to create a create method. So
sorry, what was that?
So we want to create make a create method to replace calling the default constructor.
Yeah.
So let's do that.
And if there's a way we can have that automatically change all the callers, that would be nice.
Replace constructor with factory.
Excellent.
Factory method name. No, we can just call it create. Boom. So now this is create.
Excellent.
And that's private. This constructor can be private too. And then we've got the two constructors, which I'll reorder.
You can have the line 30 just call the second constructor with new real REST template.
Yes. I can get rid of this.
We don't need that constructor at all anymore.
Yeah. Right.
And the constructor can go after the statics.
Yep. It's so much easier when it's a dummy and not a stub that's returning information.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a stub that's returning information is still pretty easy, but when you've got multiple layers, that's
well,
when
yeah.
Although I think with practice, it would not be so hard because the thin wrapper is really one line of code per method.
Yeah.
It's what caused us problems last time was the generics and figuring out what the signature was supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, like you said, like once we have it, now if I ever used, if I did this and I ever used another get for whatever, then I just reuse that code.
Yeah. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to make an HTTP adapter, HTTP
right.
client adapter.
Right.
And then that, if you open sourced it, could be used by everybody forever. And nobody would ever write another stub or anything because it would all be there. And that's what I'm hoping we'll get to next time. But yeah, I think we're done. I just want to show this off for a second because I think it's cool. If you enable if you remove line 14, enable that test, and you run it, we should see it fail, right?
Right. With an IO exception.
Yeah. But then if you change line 16 to say create null, just that one simple change, it's still running all the same code except for that little tiny stub, and now it passes. And so that right there illustrates, I think, what I'm trying to accomplish with the nullables, which is that it's exactly the same code, it's exactly the same code paths. It's just that one is talking to the outside world, one is not. So I don't think you want to keep this because this is supposed to be your sort of manual test of it talking to the outside world. But I just wanted to demonstrate that because I think it's cool.
Just to emphasize that. And so that's where I sort of where my thinking has gone this past week is what is really the thing, like sort of what we were talking about at the beginning. What is the thing that causes this stuff to be hard to test? It's that point where it hits the IO and whatever mechanism that is, and making that part the thing that gets nullable or stubbed or whatever, means that the rest of that code path is the same for both test and production, and that that can be done. So one of the things I think is would it make sense? What would it look like if I applied this to hexagonal? Because I actually sort of already do this a bit. I don't remember if I showed this before. By
the way, I do have one more thing I want to do before we wrap up.
Okay, then go ahead and do that thing. Then I'll, if we have time.
I think I'll let you do most of this off camera since we're running out of time. But what I want to do is find some of those mocks that we've got and the dummies that you've put in, and change at least a couple of them to use the create nulls so we can see how that looks. So I think that would start out with the game service notification test.
Yeah. All right, so here we've got the mock. So here we wouldn't do that.
Yeah, and so here what we need to do is do the assertion. Before you have the assertion in the mock, now we're going to do the assertion in the test. And you can, well, no, you have to not use the mock because, of course, the mock doesn't have the new behavior we've added. It doesn't have the listener on it.
Right.
So we can't continue to use the mock and move gradually. We'd have to go straight over to using the nullable version of the real thing.
So I'll do HttpScoreCategoryNotifier.
Can't do it there because we're going to have to do some stuff with it.
Oh, all right.
So you might just say score category notifier. And then above that, you're going to want to create one, and you're going to want to track its output.
And so here I'm creating the null one.
And
then track it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
create null though.
Oops. That would have failed.
But of course, you could create the real one and it would work exactly the same, except it would just require you to have the service up and running.
Right. So I don't think I have that on. Yeah, it's not on the interface. So this needs to be the real thing too. So score category notifier, track assignments, hold on to that. It's going to call it tracker. And then our assertion is going to be tracker. Let's insert that. Tracker output contains exactly. And that's going to be, well, basically what we've got.
It's going to be a list of.
It doesn't need to be a list of because it's going to be looking in the list. So we can just say new role assignment. And then it's basically this. And then 30. And then 6s.
I'm pretty sure that needs to be a list, but let's see what happens.
Var args.
Oh no, contains exactly. You're right.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
You're my bad.
Yep. Okay.
That should work, I think.
I think so
Fingers
too.
crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's take a moment to compare sort of what this looks like using the null version versus using the mock version.
So what's interesting is, I mean, the mock here is a bit, what's the word? It doesn't actually know if you've called role assign twice, for example, with something wrong and then something correct. That's a failure of the mock, not of mocking, but then I'd have to do.
But it's a hand-rolled mock.
But yeah, it's a hand-rolled mock.
To make really thorough.
Yeah, and so you'd have to do more work, and at that point, it might not be worth it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, what I like is that we're talking about the behavior, not the method call. And, compared to using an auto mocking tool, for example. And then compared to using a hand-rolled mock, what I like is that our test is more cohesive. Like the assertion and the setup are right next to each other. You had it nicely done with your mock right next to it, but it's still a little bit separated, a little bit harder to understand what exactly is being asserted.
And I could have made it configurable, which would have made it, push the stuff that's currently in role assigned and push.
But then your configuration would be before it happens, which is sort of this weird arrange, assert, act thing that you get with mocks.
Right.
Which is why I like spies.
And I'll just keep tossing back and I could have, converted it to a spy and then just inspect what it got out, which is really, the spy would probably be more like what this is doing. But I don't have to create a custom one for each situation.
Yeah, I do tend to, if I'm going to do a hand rolled, which I don't anymore because I'm using Nullables, but back when I did hand roll my test doubles, because of course the auto tools have problems. When I would hand roll my test doubles, I would hand roll spies rather than mocks because it gave me the arrange, act, assert behavior. And it was more generic. I could create one hand rolled spy and not have to have them created over and over again.
Exactly.
But it still had the problem that it was testing that I called a method with particular parameters, not that I saw particular behavior. And yes, the method being called with particular parameters is very similar to the behavior we want, but that's a coincidence, not an inherent feature of the mocks. Whereas the nullables, the inherent behavior is you are looking at the actual behavior that the class feels is relevant.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's nothing
yeah.
to say that you couldn't make a mistake in what you passed into the post for entity. While that would be harder, there's nothing to say that just because we emit this event doesn't mean that sort of the actual code actually worked.
Well, that's why I also do integration tests of my adapters.
Right.
And so the integration tests would check that I'm passing the correct thing out to the service. Yeah. And in that case, no, as long as the tests are correct, it wouldn't be possible to break it without breaking a test.
Right.
In the couple minutes we have left, I'd like to delete your mock because we don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
And
it's saying that their usages.
That's on.
Who's using it? Oh,
right.
It's like, thanks. You could have just said that was unused too, but all right. That. Remove, not transform. Now it's unused, so we can go ahead and delete that. Okay, gone.
And then let's also find one example of one of your dummies, and we can replace that now with the create null as well, just to show how it can be done. I know you've got them all over the place.
Yeah, they're all over the place. Let me go find one. So let's go.
And then I'm hoping you'll replace the rest off camera.
Yeah, I'll do that. Let's grab this one since it's already got a constant associated with it. Flip that over here. Actually, that's probably not a good idea because we'd have to create
I think that's fine. You can just have that equal HttpScoreCategoryNotifier create null, and then you can inline it, right? Or am I missing something?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So HttpScoreCategoryNotifier create null.
So let's see that work.
Yeah.
I'm paranoid. I'm running. When I'm programming, I run my tests all the time. Yeah. So that would be repeated throughout the code base.
Right.
But I just want to call that out. I think that looks nice. Rather nicer than having the. I mean, the dummy was a pretty simple little thing, but I think it looks nicer.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, once we have everything that game service uses be nullable, we can make game service nullable too. And then all these go away, and you end up just passing in the parameters that matter.
Right.
Maybe using a configurator or something like that.
Right. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's down the road.
Yeah,
it's on my list of things to try. So anyway, that's our time. Do you want to take a couple minutes and just sort of debrief what we did today and share your thoughts on it?
Yeah, let's just make sure we do a commit.
Good point.
So
I'm really glad we finished a whole chunk of stuff, though. Yeah. It's been working out that each episode, each stream has been like a meaningful piece, which has been a pleasant surprise. Yeah, and I'd say remove the hand-rolled score category mocks and dummies. And no-op, whatever you call them. Oh, no, you haven't actually done that.
I haven't finished that, so...
Yeah.
Yep. I'll make sure to finish replacing dummies.
So yeah, what are your thoughts on how this worked out?
So I really like the OutputTracker stuff. so sort of in the back of my head, I'm trying to say is this, how would this fit in with sort of domain events and application events elsewhere? So I need to see how to think about how that, but the mechanism is pretty nice, pretty easy and straightforward to assert against. Yeah. So that was really nice. Sort of anticlimactic with just the template wrapper, because that was actually pretty straightforward.
Oh, you mean creating the stub for the template wrapper? Yeah. Well, I mean, once you get used to it, that is what creating the embedded stubs is about. So even though I'm like, yeah, I know this is ugly, it doesn't really bother me because they end up being really easy to create after you've done a couple of them. After you've got a couple under your belt, it's just like, yeah, boop, 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 it's done. I think it took us about 10 minutes to put that one in.
Yeah.
And also you really only do it for a new type of communication. So we'll do one when we talk to a database. We'll have one that does all HTTP-based services. I think I made one for Socket.io. And I think that's all the actual embedded stubs I've ever made is those three. That's it.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, they get pretty easy with experience. I'm really happy with the tracker. I wasn't sure going into this how that was going to work because I'd never done it in Java, right? I'd only done it in JavaScript. And I think what we ended up with, even though it's got that sort of back and forth circular dependency, which it bothers me a little bit. The actual code, it's small and it's clean.
It's really clean. Yeah.
And the usage of it's super clean as well. And like you said, I love the way the asserts work with it. It works pretty nicely.
The assert J with the contains and contains exactly and verifying order and var args makes it just really easy to read.
One thing that we didn't see here, but you'll see if you're using an auto mocker, is when an assertion fails with an auto mocker.
Oh God.
All hell breaks loose.
You don't know what's going on. Yeah.
It is an absolute mess. It's like, expected this to be called with that, but blah, 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 blah. It's like, it is really hard to read. When this fails, it's really easy to read because it says, I expected this output and I got this output, and here's the things that were added and here's the things that were removed. And it becomes really easy to understand.
This is what the error looks like. It's like now assert J flubs, I think, some of their messaging. This can be very confusing to read for those who are not familiar with assert J. But really what you're focusing on is, wait, should this be a 4 or 6? Oh, this should be a 4, so that's what's going on. Or you'd look into the code, and so usually but only the information you need is there.
They could be a little smarter and say, instead of saying elements not found and elements found, it's like, we got none of the elements we expected and we got this instead. But it's one of those things where once you read it enough times, it sort of becomes
pattern match and you see the difference. So that turned out really nice. I agree that the output tracker, and I won't think about the bidirectional relationship anymore because it is what it is.
Well, again, it's another one of those things that it's done once.
It's done once. It works,
use it forever,
and you never have to look at it again. You're never gonna out of sight, out of mind.
Okay. So that's that. I think next time what I'd like to do is extract HTTP client or something like HTTP client out of our notifier and fetcher, and then you're going to see some real power in terms of now we'll be able to test your fetcher and notifier without having to, like, the missing tests that I keep saying, we have tests of this. And you're like, well, no, not really. We'll be able to put those in. And we'll also have a generic reusable nullable HTTP client that, again, you write it once, you use it on every project forever.
It'll be really interesting to see what that looks like. That'll be really interesting. And I'll show
looking forward to it too.
And I'll show the thing I was going to show next time. We can talk about that next time.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
So that's all, folks. Thanks once again to James for doing this, and everyone for hanging out, and to Purple Elf for your raid. I don't know if any of you all are still hanging out, but thanks a lot. And if you like this stuff, share it, repeat it, retweet it, tweet it on Mastodon, I guess. Put it on LinkedIn, share it everywhere, and tell people about it, and make sure to join us next time.
Yeah, and as a reminder, the recordings are going up on my website, which is just pointing to YouTube, and the link is jamesshore.com/s/nullables-livestream, and that will get you all the back episodes.
And we both run Discord, so join one, join both.
Join them all.
Join them all. And that's it.
All right. See y'all next time, Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific.
Yep. Bye, folks.
Bye.